Hello and welcome to our daily sketching routine. It is Friday, December 6, 2024, and today's topic will be sketching and talking about magic systems. But of course there's going to be several things going on, so I'll start by saying welcome back. If you're returning, welcome. If you're new, I sketch and post every day. And then I use timers in order to stay focused and to build a sketching habit. I'm going to set a 10-minute timer. So to begin with, I'm just going to use my usual felt tip pen thing. But originally, I'll post a link to this video. I made a video where I use a fountain pen in order to sketch intuitively. And I started coloring this dragon. And yeah, I'm just going to sketch intuitively. I'm just going to work on this page. And yeah, I'll link to it. And as I do that, so I won't talk too much about what I'm sketching. I'm just going to talk about what I brought up in yesterday's video about magic systems. But first I'll get warmed up. And I like to start like a sketchbook page and kind of leave it if I sort of run out of ideas instead of forcing it. So usually when I come back to it, I'll have more of an idea of what I want to do, which is what I'm going to do right now. But then it's also a skill because you want to, and I'm talking about sketching intuitively, which is just from imagination basically. But you basically want to just, like, you can't force it. It's whatever you can see and then you just work on it. So I'll just kind of do that. And if you want to, I mean, that might be interesting, or you might just want to listen to me talk about whatever topic it is, which for me, like, that's the interesting, although I mean obviously the artwork is interesting too, which is why it's called sketching and talking, because I like to have both if I can. But just to begin with, yeah, I mean, I'll start by talking about, well, first of all, the story that I'm working on, and that I do write the story. It's just that I'm kind of writing it the way that I do like these sketches, where I just kind of write whatever, like I set a timer, and again, kind of like this, where it's intuitive, but it's the characters or whatever like pops into my mind, just to practice writing, just to keep it going. So it's the same with art. I just keep the habit going, and then sometimes it turns into something like a lot bigger, because if you try to tackle the whole project, it's going to be too overwhelming, especially if it's a kind of a life's work kind of thing, which it is for me at this point in my life. This is what I want to do. But yeah, going back to the idea of magic, I mean, it's a fantasy story. It's not, I wouldn't call it, I mean, there's elements of high fantasy, which I Rings is, but it's also influenced by things like the Elric saga. So to me, that's kind of going into dark fantasy just because it has demons and stuff, although I wouldn't say that it's exactly dark fantasy. It has like dark elements, but I think dark fantasy starts to go more into kind of, if it has like supernatural elements such as vampires and werewolves and stuff. So the story that I'm working on is going to have elements of all that. I don't mind calling it a dark fantasy. So that already, well, the fact that it's a fantasy story already sort of implies magic. So yeah, I mean, even Um, I mean, even stories like Dune kind of has basically magic. Um, Magic in space, and of course Star Wars is basically magic. And honestly, even in like our world, I mean, science is basically like magic. It would seem like magic. It's a big topic. I'm not going to be able to cover all of the thoughts that I have. I just wanted to get it started and also just do some sketching. So, and also talk about some of the tools I'm using. So there's this one, and then I had used a fountain pen in the video that I had made of this page, but I'm not going to use a fountain pen. So basically, the tools that I'm using is this kind of a medium point, and then a fine point. I guess this would be like ultra fine, and then you've got like a black and white like brush. So these are Sharpie creative markers. This brand is called SEPA, which is kind of it was sort of a generic brand. I think I got it on sale from Amazon. And then this is a Sharpie pen, and this is a Papermate. So I just kind of play around with different pens. But so I'm using these tools because if you are just doing straight pen and ink like I'm doing without any pencil, all of these tools pretty much will get you through, or it gives me the look that I want. But yeah, going back to magic, I'll just kind of talk about like what works and what doesn't work for me. So I had mentioned in yesterday's video how like I'm okay with Lord of the Rings like system. I mean, if you want to call it a system, like the metaphysics of it, the magic of it, like I'm okay with that. But in the story that I'm writing, it's going to be rare, and it's going to be like it has to be balanced out. Like I'm not going to go into plot details because I'm still working on it. Like that's one reason, and plus obviously no reason to spoil things. But I mean, there's going to be magic. There's not like a mystery, because that's what makes it fantasy. But a lot of times with magic, so if it's a fantasy story, I think it's kind of like a superhero story where people are already suspending their disbelief and accepting that, yeah, like superhero stuff or magical stuff is going to happen. And so then it's just a matter of, as long as something, like it's already accepted, the magic, for example. So as long as something isn't, it's kind of like the plot. I mean, as long as something isn't weird, then, so to speak, like as long as sort of the internal rules of the story aren't broken, then pretty much it'll get accepted. And so that's kind of sort of what I'm thinking about. But I think a video talking about magic, I would have to talk about sort of my influences. I mean, I mentioned Lord of the Rings, but also like the Elric saga and the way that works. Also, the Mage role-playing game was like a big influence. Of course, D&D. So these are all just kind of things that I've thought about. So that's 10 minutes. I'll start another 10-minute timer. But I feel like the Mage role-playing game was a really big influence as far as it made me think differently about how magic could work and how it kind of fits into any magic system, because it was almost about magic itself. And although I never actually played I never actually role played Mage. I had the book, the handbook, and I really liked it. It got me into more esoteric stuff, and there was a disclaimer in it that was saying it's just a role playing game, that it's not real or whatever. But that would kind of fit with the whole motif of like how esoteric it actually was. So these really thin pens are kind of good. I like those. And then there are the brush pens. Kind of. Now, although there is a topic, I'll do other videos kind of going over kind of the same topics, such as I'm still figuring out how I want to do these videos. I mean, I've done them in several different ways. I like these, I mean, where I'm just kind of sketching intuitively. I feel like they can be interesting or helpful if you're just into art and wanting to draw, wanting to build the habit of it. Plus, it's a way for me to just play around with different tools. This kind of goes into the idea of style, where you're not going to know unless you kind of experiment with different looks. So yeah, this video will be kind of a little bit of a hodgepodge, because I actually do want to work on this sketch, and I won't talk too much about. I'll start another 10-minute timer, by the way. I won't talk too much about these characters. I mean, they're pretty much always going to be characters from my story, but part of it is I'm still working out the way they look. I'm also working out like the storyline, and I'm also experimenting with the kind of the style of these videos, because it's not just one kind of video. I mean, I'm going to focus on art, but then there's also world building and storytelling in general, with maybe the occasional tutorial. Although mean, all of it can kind of be like a tutorial, I guess. But mostly it's about having fun with art and sketching. So yeah, after this 10 minutes, I'll wrap up this video. But one thing is I'm enjoying using these different pens. I mean, that's part of the style. Part of it is just sketching intuitively. But going back to the idea of the magic system, I mean, I guess this guy kind of looks like Howl from Howl's Moving Castle. But yeah, I read that book when I was younger and before the movie came out, and no one really knew about it. And I had forgotten about it, but because I read a lot of those kinds of books, and like from the school library, and I mean amongst other books, but then that one kind of stood out, and I remember liking it, although I forgot about it until the movie came out, and then I remembered, like, oh yeah, I remember that story. I also liked The Witches by Roald Dahl, I think that's his name. The Willy Wonka story author. So yeah, I'm just kind of experimenting with this layout because I like to do collage-y, montage type stuff. Because part of it is it's a way for me to come up with the characters, and it's a way for me to experiment with storytelling, with styles. Without trying to come up with some kind of finished piece, but it can lead to other ideas. But one thing I do like is I've started to get more happy with the white marker thing. It takes a lot of the pressure off of using, because I like to just sketch with pen. And I'll leave that. Work on this dragon. Yeah, sometimes the tough part is actually just leaving it alone, which I'm not doing. And just, yeah, that's kind of part of it, is just leaving it alone. Also, I'm just getting more into using the color. I've done several videos about it, but I like it. Using these markers for the color. I think it just kind of goes with my approach. Like the sketchy approach. Although sometimes it's good to do more finished pieces too. And I will do videos about digital art. I mean, I have my process. It's just that right now I'm more focused on this, and when I do the digital stuff, it'll be utilizing a lot of this, which originally that's how I started doing digital art, was kind of going off of what I did traditionally, but then the more I used it and the more sort of quicker you had to, like the turnaround, the deadlines and whatnot, it I just became faster at using it digitally, but you kind of get rusty with like the traditional skills. But yeah, with stuff like this, you kind of have to just leave it alone and then and come back to it. But yeah, this video is a little bit of a hodgepodge. I'm gonna have to, there was some dead space where I was just kind of sketching without saying anything, and I didn't really talk a ton about the magic system, but I did a little bit. We'll see how much I kind of rambled and stuff, so just kind of comes with the territory. But yeah, I'm gonna wrap this up. I mean, ultimately for me, I make these videos because I want to keep the daily sketching habit and just kind of focus on that. So yeah, with that said, I want to thank you for joining me today for our daily sketching habit, and I want to thank you for supporting the channel. If you like these videos, it helps to keep this going, and until next time, keep on sketching.